Thank you for dropping by at Equity Communities of Practice, the convening place for cross-sector collaboration, community advocacy, and personal development, where development and growth are key to achieving sustainable and effective change. Our mission is to leverage insights gained through ongoing community building to promote health equity across all sectors, including finance, education, healthcare, public health, environmental justice, corporate social responsibility, and more. For more information, visit our website at www.equitycommunitiesofpractice.com. Together, we can make a difference. And now your host, Executive Director, Dr. Harry Pettaway, aka Dr. Harry the Equity Coach.
Good. I always got to look at the time. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I hope y'all are doing well today. Man, it has been an interesting couple of weeks. Wouldn't you say? Would you agree? I have no idea. I am Dr. Harry, the Equity Coach of Equity Communities of Practice. If you are tired of the doom scrolling, if you're trying to figure out, man, where do we go from here? If you are tired of talking to echo chambers where people just agree with you, you want a different perspective, if you're tired of living in a silo, I invite you to come on over to Equity Communities of Practice, where we will help you break your personal algorithm so you can get shit done, especially in this time of interesting need. Hey, let's get to this quote really quick before I start telling you all stories. If you're down and confused, it seems so dramatic right now. If you're down and confused and you don't remember who you're talking to, concentration slips away because your baby is so far away. Well, there's a rose in a fisted glove, and the eagle flies with the dove. And if you can't be with the one you love, honey, love the one you're with. And that's kind of my theme and my perspective on the clickbait title that I have included for today. I also invite you, it's always fun if you get a like, if somebody follows one of the channels, if you comment. There's a plethora of options for you to follow both myself and Equity Communities of Practice, but I am curious how you are arriving today, and I will give you a bit of perspective on how I am arriving. So, here's what happened. I got tired of all the misinformation that's out there, especially from a public health equity standpoint. Facebook's a little different. TikTok's a little different. I mean, the conversations over there are completely random and always extremely one-sided. But I went looking at LinkedIn, and I know I always talk about LinkedIn. The reason for that is that there are a lot of decision makers on LinkedIn. It's easy to search for stuff on LinkedIn. And so what I decided, instead of being in the echo chambers where people want to talk about how the sky is falling or how great the sky is, that I would actually venture over into a conversation that did not necessarily align with my values. And those values, again, are along the health equity lines. And it was really interesting. I would say that I took my health equity stance over to what might consider to be the right and joined some of those conversations. Which was interesting to say the least. And the reason why I'm going to say interesting to say the least is because they were a bit more receptive to what I had to say than folks that I would actually expect to agree with me, which might be center left. So I'm arriving a bit tired. Still a bit concerned from a health equity standpoint about where we're at, but optimistic that there are other change makers like myself that are out there ready to go. So please let me know in the chat whether you're here for the tech, here for the jokes, here because we are related, whatever it is. Let me know. Let me know if you are joining live or this is recorded. And let me know how you're feeling about things, how you're arriving to this conversation. Again, we're going to be talking about a little bit RFK Jr. I know it's a touchy topic. I know that my position on RFK doesn't align with left or right. It's just my position. But we're going to focus this as always, in a health equity perspective. And by doing that, we're actually going to talk more about the socio-ecological model. One of my favorite nerdy out things to talk about. So let's get into that for a minute. Socio-ecological model. Wrong button. We're going to go back to this. Socio-ecological model. The socio-ecological model is a framework used in public health to understand the various factors influencing health outcomes and behaviors. It highlights the interplay between individual, social, and environmental factors. Environmental factors in this model are primarily found at the institutional, community, and policy levels, which shape the physical, social, and structural context of which people live and interact. And when we look at the socio-ecological model, there's 5, and we're using the 5 stage model. Individual, which is attitudes, knowledge, skills, and behaviors. Interpersonal, social networks, family and friends. Institutional, workplaces, schools and organizations. Community, neighborhoods, cities, resources, and norms. And to what we will be talking about today is policy, local, state, and federal legislation. And with the wrong button. Local, state, and federal legislation. The policy level of the social ecological model encompasses the laws, regulations, and institutional policies that shape health, economic, and social systems. Policies at local, state, and national levels influence access to healthcare, education, labor protections, and environmental conditions, all of which impact public well-being. Whether through legislation, funding, allocation, or regulatory enforcement, policies determine the structural conditions in which individuals and communities navigate daily life. Policy development, however, does not occur in isolation. It is shaped by a network of key individuals and institutions operating within a broader social context. Elected officials, public health leaders, corporate executives, and community advocates all play a role in influencing policy outcomes. While data and research inform decision-making, social norms, power dynamics, and political ideologies also shape the policies that govern public health and resource distribution. When barriers to participation exist, such as exclusion from policymaking processes or fear of retaliation, or advocacy policies risk reinforcing inequities rather than addressing them. Inclusive policymaking, supported by diverse perspectives and protections from those who speak out, ensure that policies reflect the needs of the broader population rather than interests of a silent few. Recognizing the policy level of the socio-ecological model as a driver of systemic change highlights the needs for equity-driven governance that fosters public trust and sustainable health outcomes. That was a lot, wasn't it? I think so. I think it was a lot. So here's the deal. We're talking about policy, especially as it relates to RFK Jr., who's going to be one of the most influential folks in health equity. And I wanted to, or most influential folks related to public health and will influence health equity. But I wanted to get into a little bit about how people perceive RFK, because it's really interesting. And I talk a lot about the social context, things like that. But this is one of those things where it's like, you got to kind of seek out what people are saying. And so this is what they say about RFK. So most of the conversations have seemed to go like this, right? It's like a 50-50 split. RFK, well, actually, I should say like a 40-40 split, because there's a 20% of people that are actually down with RFK. And so RFK Jr.'s confirmation hearing was hard to watch. His anti-vax stance is bad enough, but his history of pushing racist and scientifically false claims about health is just as bad. Let's talk about it. Next one. I took time to listen to the hearings of RFK Jr. And if it weren't so disturbing it would qualify as prime time comedy. The level of immaturity on display from our elected officials was staggering. When children let their emotions outpace logic, they get animated, raise their voices, and refuse to listen. Exactly what we witnessed from the Democratic senators, not one of whom showed even the slightest interest of hearing Robert's answers. I love how he said Robert. It's very, very connected on that one. In fact, most wouldn't even allow him to speak. On the rare occasion he managed to get a word in, they immediately dismissed him as a liar. And what's interesting for me is that I don't know what other confirmation hearings this person has looked at, but that is the goal, my opinion, of confirmation hearings, meaning that you take the time to get your buzzer beaters in, your sound bites, all those things, not necessarily to see what the candidate is really talking about. So here is, though, the one that's interesting for me. All right, there's two that I want to talk about. And let me take myself off of this screen. Projected that RFK Jr. will be confirmed. The next one is "We the people have spoken." Novel concept on that one. Now public servants need to do their duty. I dare say there is a hint of holding someone accountable on that one. Agree. Which actually, what I'm realizing is that I think this is the same person that wrote this. So again, like some of these conversations that I'm digging into on LinkedIn are a trip because they seem to be made up. This person then went on to say is that this is exactly what we need: a trial lawyer who has consistently been a David against Goliath for corporations. You know, blah blah blah. They're corrupt. He's not. Here's kind of one of the situations where I'm in, where Nicholas talks about, I might disagree with RFK Jr. on a lot of political issues, but let's be honest, if it wasn't for him, we would not be talking about the toxic ingredients in our food, the explosion of chronic diseases, the corruption within the medical establishment, and the overall decline of our nation's health. He forced these conversations into the spotlight when few others would. That's just facts. If people don't want to acknowledge that, people are very opinionated. And it's interesting because RFK Jr. has, on the left, everybody's mad at him because he went to go work with Trump. There's this idea that he's not qualified. Merit versus DEI versus everything else. I think people also forget that Mr. Kennedy ran for president and even when he tried to take himself out the ballot, he still got enough people that agreed with what he was talking about. So here's my stance. Nobody called me to be the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And for most of the people that I know, they didn't get called either. So the question about whether or not Mr. Kennedy is qualified, that's in the hands of, I don't know, who is it, the Senate that votes on that? Not my call. But as a public health person, as a health equity person, I'd be damned if somebody's going to tell me that I can't work with Mr. Kennedy on things that I think are important. Those things, regenerative agriculture. If you don't know about it, Google it, dig into it. And I will guarantee you, though, you will ask yourself this question: how is he going to talk about regenerative agriculture, preventative health medicine, those preventative health behaviors, processes, and policies to try to get out of a sick care system? How's he going to manage that in a Trump administration? How are you going to talk about resource distribution, stuff like that, if you can't use certain types of data? You know what I mean? Kind of weird. Things that I will push back at Mr. Kennedy for are like if he wants to get rid of vaccines. And to be honest, I'm not sure how that's even an option from a national security standpoint, seeing how other health-related activities, like pulling away from the World Health Organization, stopping the surveillance. I know my epidemiologists are pissed off, but the surveillance of things like bird flu, Ebola, malaria, I think was stopped. That's a tricky thing. So my bet is that Mr. Kennedy is going to get fired because I don't think he cares too much about a Republican agenda or a Democratic agenda. I think he has his own agenda. But like I said, there's this mentality. I got beat up in a forum for agreeing with some of the things that Kennedy said. Name one thing that Kennedy said that was positive, and I already mentioned them, being regenerative agriculture, focus on our food system, which is toxic. And again, these are things I'm not sure how he plans on making those changes in a capitalistic industrial complex like we have with the current administration. And that's not like a dig on the administration. That's just kind of facts on some of that. So I'm curious what you all think about it. Would you work with Mr. Kennedy? Would you not work with Mr. Kennedy? One of the other things about this is that I have not heard of a number two, meaning I have not heard anyone say, hey, this is who would do a better job. This is who would pass through the current state of politics, meaning a stronghold by the Republicans. This is who has a better idea of how to reshape our healthcare system, our agricultural system, our public health systems. I'm not saying that this is the guy and this is the only guy. What I'm saying is I got a PhD. Nobody called me for this job. So if former presidential candidate Robert Kennedy, yeah, that's the right one, has the job, I'll work with him. I'll work with anybody that wants to make us healthier. And I will tell you this, I will also fight against Mr. Kennedy if he does things that we don't agree with. This idea that we have to just sit back and take it is kind of silly. I encourage everyone to call and email your congressional leaders, your senators, your local governments, go to school board meetings, right? Pay attention to some of the facts instead of sitting back, doom scrolling and sitting in your echo chamber about how the sky is either falling or how great the world is. Whichever one. If you stay in those, you stay over there and don't join 85% of the people in the middle, we're never gonna get anywhere. I appreciate y'all joining today. I invite you to come on over and break your personal algorithm in 2025 to Equity Communities of Practice. We will still have the social determinants of health challenge. You can get a badge. Everybody wants a badge, right? And more Equity Communities of Practice challenges. Come on over and join us. Fun. Break your personal algorithm. Talk to other people. Get different perspectives. Be the change you want to be. All those things, right? Going back to our quote today, love the one you're with. It is by Stephen Stills, but I did share the performance by the Isley Brothers. Feel free to use the QR code. Hopefully you enjoyed today. The best thing you can do to help me out is to smash that like button. I just love saying that. Subscribe, share the video, and either let me know in the comments about topics you'd like me to cover as they relate to public health and health equity, or something that you might like me to react to. With that, I hope you all have a great night.